All right, welcome everyone. This is Vince of vinceprep.com, and I am thrilled today to have a dear friend, guest presenter talking about interesting changes and trends in the test prep and admissions world. Travis Morgan is here with us today. Welcome, Travis.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, Vince, good to see you, man.
Where are you at? Where are you based right now?
So yeah, I run my own company called MBA Whisper, and I'm based in Los Angeles. So yeah, we're in many time zones away.
Nice. And you've spent time all over the world. I mean, with the work you've done, you've traveled quite a bit.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, most recently I actually lived in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for almost a year. So yeah, but I've lived in many parts of the world, and happy to be back here in LA.
And you got your MBA at Kellogg.
I did, yes. And so I graduated with my own MBA, Kellogg '09. And I did actually, I worked in admissions while I was there, and also was an interviewer for Kellogg as well, admissions interviewer.
Kellogg Interviews are famous, right? For just, well, I mean, it's such a great innovation that the school was being, M7 but open for interviews. I thought that was brilliant.
Yes, in fact, my understanding is they first started that many years ago. I mean, probably 25, 30 years ago or more. And it was because Kellogg was actually a pretty unknown name way back then. And so it was how they were able to find diamonds in the rough, right? These really great candidates who may not have looked as great on paper, but ended up being just incredible. And interestingly, when Business Week very first came out with their rankings of business schools, Kellogg was the number one school. Came out, sort of this dark horse came out of nowhere. Kellogg was the number one, and it was because they had these graduates that the recruiters just loved. A little more down to earth, a little more friendly, a little more. They were the diamonds in the rough, and so that they've carried that through even until today. They interview everybody pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And then you, before MBA, you were in broadcast journalism, or you were in the media space, right?
That's right. Yeah, I worked in TV news for 4 years before I went to Kellogg, and in my hometown of Seattle. And so if any of our viewers here are in Seattle, I worked for a little station called Northwest Cable News that covered Washington, Oregon, and Idaho news. And then I moved to the NBC affiliate in Seattle called King 5 News there before I went on to get my MBA. Yeah, so this idea of storytelling and helping people really understand like what resonates with people, whether that's admissions officers or whatnot, is a big part of what I love of what we do.
And you've tutored GMAT for a long time, and your results are. I just introduced a client, and he fell in love, and he's working with you already. So tell us more about the about that aspect of what you do, because I know you've got this idea for making this video came because you and I caught up a few weeks ago, and I just was really impressed with your whole philosophy. You were saying stuff about testing and test prep that I had just never heard.
So I'm one of the few people I know that that does test prep as well, right? And so I have taught the GMAT for over a dozen years, and which is kind of strange, right? Because it's teaching algebra and grammar and super boring stuff, right? But I really like it, and one of the reasons that I really like it is that I get to work with students who are really motivated, right? They have a goal, like I want to get into business school, I'm working with a new client who wants to go to get her PhD in accounting, or whatever their reason is. But nobody takes the GMAT or the GRE or the executive assessment or any of these exams for fun.
Right.
there's a motivation behind it, right? There's a reason, and so I really enjoy working with motivated students. Um, and one of the things that one of the key things, especially for these exams, is if you go into it just thinking that it's a math test and an English test, you're going to plateau out. Like, it is not just a test about content. It really is testing things. I like to say it's like playing a game with a friend, but they've only told you half the rules.
Ah,
Right? So that, whether it's the GMAT or the GRE, executive assessment, right? They tell you that they're going to test you on algebra and on geometry and on probability and on word problems and these sorts of topics. But what they don't tell you is that there's all of this underlying um, it, these other skills that they are where they're really testing you, right? So they're testing your ability to use creative problem solving skills to solve something that perhaps you haven't seen exactly like that before. There's a reason why they throw these weird kind of curveball things at you, and it's not. A lot of people get frustrated with the exam because they think like, why are they trying to trick me? And it is to test these less linear, like do step one, then do step two, then do step three, to see if you have those more creative, more managerial type skills, but they don't tell you that that's what they're testing.
and and do you think that you're good at take and you yourself rocked the test, as I remember.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, in fact, I used to work for a company called Veritas Prep, and every single one of our instructors had to score in the 99th percentile. So, yep, yeah, I did, and so I scored. I'm a 99th percentile scorer myself, and but one of the things that I kind of take pride in is being able to see the exam through other people's eyes, rather than just a 99th percentile test taker's eyes. Like if I'm, you know, working from the even the 400s, the 500s, the 600s. I'm trying to push, through like, how do I see the exam, right? What am I noticing? What am I not noticing? Right? Like what what do I immediately just, start doing a whole bunch of math, or do I take a second and step back and think about things for a little bit? Things like this. Um, I've tried to bottle up what what naturally good test takers just do, on their own, naturally, and say, how can you teach that as a skill? Yeah.
and
Hmm.
it's that nonlinear thinking and that sort of three-dimensional problem solving or pulling things in from other places. Is that the crux of it?
Um,
Or
it
part of
can
it?
help, but some people do that naturally. Like, for me, I'll look at a problem and be like, oh, well, because of this over here and this over here and this thing that I learned in the fourth grade, now I understand what's going on. This and I just sort of more naturally think in a more. I think of it almost like cloud thinking instead of like linear step one, step two, step three, and that's just naturally the way that I think about things in general. And you and I know each other well enough to know that, yeah, I mean, that's not test taker Trav. That's just Trav. Right? That's just the way that I look at things. But a lot of people are more linear in the way that they think, and that's okay, right? And so, but what we do is we, say, okay, if I'm a more linear thinker, right? And I'm like, Travis, I need to know, like, first do this, then do that, then do this, then do that. Can we boil down these sorts of things into a framework, right? And in business school, we learn a lot about frameworks, right? Um, but a framework is not is meant to be applicable sort of in many, many, many different scenarios, right? So a framework on test prep would allow you to have this frame of like, every time I see a problem like this, I'm gonna think, first do this, then do that, then do this. And yet you can within each of those steps, you're gonna be able to apply it to that specific problem. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah, it does.